One of the most fundamental methodologies we practice is named push versus pull. It's a system that allows for the most intellectual and powerful conversations between salespeople, politicians, journalists, CEOs, managers, clients, and many more. This video will be the most important one I've made so far. It's the most valuable information I can share that showcases the unprecedented power of pull. There are easily over 150 pull techniques. Some are so powerful it almost becomes terrifying of what you can do to the thought processes, beliefs and subconscious of others. In today's video, I will show you clips of people worldwide talking, debating, discussing, selling and interviewing that either does a phenomenal job on pulling, or they're going down a road that isn't adding value to a conversation and they just start pushing. We also correlate everything to doing business and talking with potential new clients. But before we continue, you must understand what push versus pull does. As you see in this animation, every human has a defense mechanism. Inside this defense mechanism, you could call it a firewall, are beliefs that make you who you are. Everyone looks at the world differently. Everybody understands and accepts information in their own way. When you are pushing, you are either doing two things. You push information that confirms their beliefs, nothing changes. Or you push information that isn't part of their belief, also nothing changes. Although a push in a conversation can be powerful, a powerful statement, it's almost always used wrong. I would even say that pushing has never got me personally more business, and it hasn't contributed to my success, and it didn't impact the people I'm working with. Now, the pull is a very challenging strategy that uses unique techniques to achieve one or both of the following. You can pull information from others' belief systems to better understand how these beliefs have been created, where they come from, and why they have these beliefs. You must first understand to be understood. If you do everything correctly, in the first one, you could even influence the other person's belief, which eventually could lead to action, change and new insight. The one who's pulling is entirely in charge and can steer thoughts, actions and even the subconscious. So, without further ado, let's go and have a look at the clips. It's morally wrong to eat meat.
Actually. Why do you say disagree, not strongly disagree?
Bam! He starts with the interview, they made their choice and the first thing he's doing already is a pull. Now it seems perhaps like a question, but it is very powerful because he's in charge from the beginning already. Let's have a look a little bit further.
Because it depends what type of meat.
So what do you mean by type of meat?
He's doing a pretty good job over here. He's asking another question. And if you look at her, you can see that she needs to think. She needs to think about the question that's raised and she has to answer it.
I personally disagree with eating meat that has been bought from the supermarket. I don't believe...
What he's doing very nicely is also a pull technique. And the way we call it, it's giving support. So he's doing his head a little bit like this, and he looks very friendly, and he's saying, what it does, it gives the subconscious of the other the feeling that it's perfectly fine to speak and give a lot of information.
In walking down a supermarket aisle to these perfectly wrapped pink pieces of flesh with kind of no...
But seeing what he's doing, he's constantly, yeah.
relationship to where they're from.
So what type of meat do you advocate for people to eat?
I personally...
Perfectly again, it's a perfect pull question. It's an open-ended question, very short, and it activates the thinking of the person sitting in front of him.
Personally hunt the meat that I eat myself. Okay. I don't advocate that everyone goes out there and hunts because it's impractical. No. However, I do promote that there is wild meat available to be purchased online. So I suppose I do advocate to eat meat that's been responsibly and ethically sourced over meat.
You can see for yourself how it works already in the beginning of this interview. He only asked 3 questions, very short. Who's doing the work over here?
That's been produced in mass factory farmed conditions.
What we both agree on there is that we want people to be connected.
Brilliant. So what we both agree on. So basically what he is doing 2 things in the techniques that we use. He's creating common ground. The easiest way to explain that is that you're both part of the same group. And he's summarizing it. And if you summarize it, it really helps to create, added value. If you compare it to a selling environment where you have to sell something, you see if you create common ground, the other person will like you because you are part of the same group. And if you summarize and you do that correctly, the other person will give you a lot of bonus points, as we call it, because you summarize it a-specific, and it helps to clear the thoughts of the other person. Brilliant.
Walkers at the point.
We're going to watch at Joe Rogan, and Joe Rogan is one of my favorites. Why? Because he's very successful with his podcast, and the reason for it is that he definitely masters the art of pulling. And in this scene, he's talking to a lady who has different thoughts on climate change. And let's see how it's going, because we've got 2 parts of it. We're going to look at it, the first one, and later on in the video, we're going to look at a different part of this interview.
I don't understand how you think that we're almost losing America, and there's a battle for America.
I really feel that, like, just in every regard, in terms of just the people that were running, like Hillary Clinton. Like, this woman was a globalist. Like, just think about who we were in bed with, like Saudi Arabia, selling all of our uranium to Russia. Like Trump came in and was like, no, like America, people, we were the gap, like we're losing the middle class. The gap between the rich and the poor was like literally.
And what do you think is causing that?
So she's giving all kinds of statements. He only asked 1 question, which is a pool again. Let's see how she responds.
Policies.
Let's go back very quickly, just 1 second. Look at her eyes when he raised the question.
America, people, we were the gap, like we're losing the middle class. The gap between the rich and the poor was like literally.
And what do you think is causing that?
Watch your eyes.
Policy.
You can see from her eyes, it's a very strong question because she really needs to think about it. And that's exactly what we're talking about when we pull. So if you raise questions, and question is just one of the 150 techniques that we developed in pulling. If you raise questions, it basically stimulates the thinking of the other person. And that's what Joe Rogan do excellent so far.
Policies, shipping all of our jobs overseas, the regulation, the government getting bigger and bigger. You can't do anything as an entrepreneur in America without a piece of paper from the government, discouraging people with this piece of paper, like shutting down the factories, forgetting that there's something, there's a little land between New York and LA, believe it or not, and this is what Trump understood. We were losing that. And Trump appealed to those people. I'm still floored. Like, as I'm traveling the world and seeing different pieces of the country, I'm learning how ignorant I was. Like, and that's the best thing in the entire world.
Way?
If you just listen to all the information she's giving about how she sees the world, her belief system, and it's all triggered by just asking 1 question.
I fell victim to the idea that it was progress. We have to care about the environment. It was progress. And it's like, no, we've been losing. America has been losing. And Donald Trump understood that in a way that I didn't. And
I don't think we have to care about the environment?
No, not even a little bit.
Not even a little bit?
No. Okay, let me clarify this. I don't.
Interesting, because now it's not a question anymore. It's something like, okay, I'm going to intervene and say something. Joe Rogan. I don't know if it really made a difference with her.
I don't throw trash on the ground. Okay. I'm not saying we need to trash the environment. But do I believe in climate change? No.
You don't believe in climate change?
Well, I think the climate always changes, I guess is what I should say. Do I believe that this is an issue that is being that is global warming, which they've changed conveniently. They got rid of the word once scientists started disproving it. Now they only say climate change. No, I think that was just a way to extract dollars from Americans. I don't at all believe they had no actionable plan. It was great for Trump to get out of that deal. It was terrible.
Okay, but this is an incredibly complicated subject.
Right.
And if you would have to talk to a bunch of different scientists and see how they gather data and see what they understand about CO2 levels and what's the danger of them and what can come.
What you can see here is that he is summarizing it a little bit different than what she is saying. He's adding some items to it. But you can see from her reaction, she needs to listen what he's saying. And basically it's a summarize. And because he's doing so, he can ask another question to her at the end of the summarize. Let's see how he's doing that.
Combat it, what could not. Have you done all this, or
No,
do you
so I
take
think-
this flippant opinion based
listen,
on the party line?
This wouldn't be the hill I died on, right? But it's not.
So have you basically is a closed question, so it should be better if you would ask a real open question. If you would ask us something like, okay, you have an opinion on that, what is the research that you've done so far? It would have probably been much stronger for her to think about what he's asking.
The Earth is flat. Why do you say that?
The interviewer starts with, why do you say that? And that's a perfect open-ended question, which you already know by now is a pull technique.
The evidence that we've seen doesn't suggest that what we've been told is true.
What evidence
Such
have
as?
you seen?
Well, I personally have been to...
So there's another question. So this guy needs to do the work here in the interview.
to Lake Balaton with FE Core, and we've actually done a laser test from one end of the lake to the, well, didn't do the full lake because it's massive, but we did a 12-kilometre test, and we could actually see the laser from one end to the other. And since then, the guys have actually produced a 40-kilometre laser test.
So this guy with a laser debunks all the pictures?
No, it's not.
You start trying to summarize it, or actually check it. It depends a little bit on how long his summarize was. So far, so good.
It's not. That's the only thing. It's just an example of some of the experiments.
So, Darren, you were sceptical at first, weren't you? So you thought,
I think it's right to be sceptical about alternative views, but what we never are is sceptical about the mainstream view that we're told since we're children. Over and over again, it's programmed into us.
So what finally convinced you then?
Well, it took me 6 months. I was sceptical for the first 6 months, and there are a couple.
She's checking, and he just continue explaining, and what he's saying sounds very logical.
Couple of main things. One is water always finds level. So in our own experience in natural physics, you have a cup of tea or a swimming pool or a lake, water is level, but we're led to believe that, the Earth is supposed to be 70% water, so at some point water starts curving around a ball. Now, obviously, the answer to that is the magic of gravity.
Yeah.
Now, I believe gravity exists, but only as an effect, not as a cause. So science itself has never proven gravity as a force itself. What is proven is 9.8 meters per squared.
Pulling is pulling is really about letting go of your own ideas and basically set aside your own ego. If you look at the face of this man, he's not setting aside his own ego, he already has an opinion. And the only thing that he's doing from this point of view is just checking if these guys are wrong or not. And he's not trying to understand anymore. Let's have a look.
Meters per second squared is the near constant rate of acceleration towards the Earth all over the Earth.
What is happening here?
That's what I'm saying. We don't know, and science has never proven.
So it seems like a pull question, but the way he pronounced it, the tone of voice, it's almost a push.
Proven that as a force. Obviously, they have proven it is observable science that things accelerate at the same rate. Yeah, but
And that we're stuck to the ground.
Nobody knows what is actually causing it, and scientists themselves will tell you.
So
We have
Sir Isaac Newton got that wrong, did he?
Now this is a push. And let's translate it a little bit into a situation with a customer. You ask a question to a customer and he's explaining a certain situation. And you're thinking to yourself, okay, this is interesting. What happens is that before you know, your own ideas and view on the world are leading. And if that happens, you start pushing very quickly. So watch out for that.
Most of the
87%.
time, the consensus of scientists that are studying the data.
Right.
And so what they're doing is
But do
studying.
you remember all of the stories that came out about the scientists?
This is the second part of the interview where we already showed the first part of this interview. And in the beginning he was asking questions, but he was not able to put his own ego aside in this interview. And normally you can do that perfectly. So let's see where this ends.
That said that when they tried to present their evidence to show like they were basically just getting shut down at every corner. You can pull that up too, like scientists who look up the opposite.
Okay, he's pulling again. What do you mean? By the way, that's always a perfect question to ask. If you don't know what to do, you don't know what to say, you just ask, what do you mean? And then the other person will respond. Just watch. Right? Instead of looking for what you're searching for, looking for what you're not looking for.
I didn't search for it. That's what I found when I searched it.
Sorry.
Yeah,
but yeah. Look up.
But
look
this
up,
is my question.
Yeah.
Why are you so sure? This is an
because what you just said. Because what you just said.
This is an extremely complicated subject.
Okay, that's a pity because the question, why are you so sure? If you would have then stopped, looked at her, I know for sure the answer would be different.
And it is.
Because now what he's doing, he's asking a question, but puts his own opinion behind it. And perhaps you recognize it when you're sitting with the customer. You start to think for your customer. So you ask a question, but you already give 2 or 3 answers to it. I'll give you an example. What do you think about the weather? Do you think it's nice? Do you think it should be better? Do you think it's too cold? And then you drop it to the customer. Just ask the question. What do you think about the weather? He's making the same mistake here.
And it is. I said I am not so sure that I would die on the hill for it. Mm-hmm. My opinion right now, and is just that it was a means, because forget the fact of whether you believe global warming is real. Let's say it's 100% real. Let's say we know for a fact it's real. Is there a way?
Well, let's be clear.
Yeah.
Global warming, climate change is definitely real. It's happening.
Well,
the question
but
is, why has it happened?
happened.
Yes, it has always happened.
So what is the climate change? Yes, the climate changes. It was different weather yesterday than it was today. The climate is forever changing. Like that's the problem, is that people are making it seem like that's something weird.
No,
that's
unique.
Not.
You're misrepresenting the issue. The issue is people think.
This is a push. If you start by saying you're misrepresenting the issue, for sure it's a push. Let's see how he responds to that.
Think that human beings are exacerbating climate change to the point where there's a tipping point. We cross over that tipping point. We're going to deal with huge problems that could be corrected if we act now and put a lot of funding into climate control.
Okay.
And this is what Howard Bloom was on talking about a few days ago. He was talking about that the real future involves the technology of climate control, and that what we have to be really careful of is letting it get too far where you can't ever stop it and pull it back. This is what.
Okay, Joe Rogan is doing an interview. He wants to reach out to people, and basically he wants to see how he can perhaps change her mind. But he's giving so much information, it's almost impossible for people to do something with it. So at that point, it becomes a push. So if you need to explain something, if somebody asking a question to you, you should always answer the question. But be aware that you don't explain too much. Just imagine if I continue explaining what we're doing over here. It's too much information. You can't deal with it anymore. So, how does it work? You raise a question, you listen to the answer, somebody else is asking a question to you, you answer it, not too long, and you follow it up with a new question. I hoped you learned something. And of course, it must have been enjoyable as well. Everybody can pull. It's not as difficult as people think it is. But if we think, it becomes way more complicated putting it into practice. It starts with really trying to understand how people behave, why they say what they say, and put your own ego aside. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.